Hello everybody, my name is Vincent and I am one of the sharpeners at Korin Japanese Trading. Today we're going to talk about sharpening a petty knife or utility knife. This is going to be very similar to the sharpening of a chef knife, which I've done in the previous video, but we'll go over this and tell you the differences and similarities. We're going to start with the 300 grit diamond stone just like we did before, and we're going to wet it to make sure it's ready to use. In the previous episode, we used 3 pennies for the 30 side angle. With the utility knife, however, you want to make sure that you use a slightly higher angle. So today we're going to use 4 pennies. By using a higher angle, you will be able to achieve a burr much quicker. With a utility knife or a petty knife, you want to make sure you don't overwork the knife, or else you're going to end up grinding off a lot of material very, very quickly. So holding this 4 penny angle, we're going to start on the tip and press firmly, pulling towards you. You want to make sure you work in sections and work down the length of the knife. Once you get to the very corner, just like the chef knife, we're going to make sure we press firmly onto that very, very corner. Now, because we're using a much higher angle, we're going to end up getting a burr much quicker. That way, we're not going to wear off too much of the knife. However, because we're using a higher angle, we're going to end up with a more pronounced bevel. In order to accommodate for that, once you get a burr, we're going to go back to the 3 penny angle, and we're going to make sure that we widen that bevel a little bit. And do this for a couple of strokes, because you already got the burr, so you don't need to overwork the knife. And then you're ready to flip over to the front side. The front side for a chef knife was 2 pennies. So for a utility knife or a petty knife, we're going to use 3 pennies. Lay the spine of the knife onto the pennies, and starting at the tip again, just like before, you want to make sure you lift your wrist up a little bit so that the tip is touching the stone, and we're going to push away. You want to work down the length of the knife. And once you get to the bottom, use your thumb and press firmly on the corner. Now, just like before, we're going to get a burr much quicker because we're using a higher angle. If you don't get a burr on the first try, just keep going until you do. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you keep the 7:3 ratio. So for every 3 strokes you do on the back, you want to do 7 on the front. Now, once you get a burr, just like we did on the back side, because we started with 3 pennies, now we're going to do 2 pennies to widen that bevel again. But since you already got the burr, you don't need to work on it for too long. Just a couple of strokes will do the trick. Once you do that, then you are done with your first stone. Then we'll move on to our second stone. With the second stone, in this case, which is a medium 1000 grit, you want to do the same thing that you did on the previous stones. So on the back side, we're going to start with the 4 pennies and quickly get a burr or a ridge to form. Again, starting at the tip, you want to pull towards you. Check for a burr to form. Then go a little bit lower to the 3 penny angle and widen that bevel. Once you do that, make sure that you have the ridge, and then flip over to do the front side. You're going to work on this side more because it's a 70 side, and you're going to use the 3 penny angle to start, again at the tip, lifting your wrist up and pushing away from you. Work until you get a ridge to form. Once you get a ridge, then use the slightly lower 2 penny angle and widen that bevel again. Check for the ridge again, make sure that it's all even along the length of the blade, and then move on to your final stone. In this case, it's the Kitayama 8000 finishing stone. Make sure you coat it with water, and just like before, when you're using a finishing stone, you want to make sure you don't press too hard. You also want to use the higher angle just so that you touch the very, very tip of the blade. So we're going to start on the back side just like before with the 4-penny angle on the tip. However, I'm going to press much, much lighter than on the previous stones. Work in sections, and keep in mind you're not going to get a ridge when you're using a finishing stone. What you're looking for is your edge to be more and more refined and polished. Take a look at your edge to see that it's being polished, and it's going to get shinier. That's what you're basically looking for. Once you get that on the one side, flip over to the other side and use the 3-penny angle here and very lightly press away from you. You want to make sure you keep this 7:3 ratio while using the finishing stone as well. And check your blade every now and then to see how polished it is. Once you make sure that there's no burr remaining and your edge is polished on both sides, you should have a fairly sharp utility knife or petty knife.